Hello, welcome to the October 29th, 2024 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you've not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could indicate which levels of Cubase that you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or what version number, so if it's 11, 12, or 13, and also which operating system, that information is helpful. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be eclipsed depending on the number of questions. We will go through all the questions chronologically as asked, but realize that we will go through them, and if we could avoid asking the same questions repeatedly, that would be appreciated. So we should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field so that we could refer to that to navigate to specific times. If you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating the website. We have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community experience, and we appreciate their efforts. We also want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of info for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today. I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and say hello. Today is the last live stream of the month, so we will be doing our Zoom meetup in about 2 hours. So I posted the link. I'll try to do that about every 30 minutes or so. But with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Jim Holland's first question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to make sure that when I change workspaces, the snap doesn't come back on automatically? All right, so let's take a look. So let's say I have my snap disabled. Let's go to a workspace. Let's say if I come here to a big mixer, it looks like the snap came on. Let me see if that workspace was let's create a new workspace here. And I'm going to turn the snap on. And let's create just a quick workspace. Okay, so I will recall my project workspace here. We'll see if the snap turns on. So I wonder if the snap is preserved with the workspace. All right, so I'm going to come here to the big mixer and see if I update. So let's come over here. So close this. So snap is disabled. Yeah, it looks like it is turned on. I'll make sure to include that in a report. So sorry about that. But I don't know. I don't think that there is a preference for dealing with that. So it may just automatically turn on. Let me just. Yeah, so it looks like turning the workspace on does affect the snap. You think those wouldn't be related, but I'll make sure to pass that on, Jim. Thanks for letting us know. All right, so we have Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset, UK. Stanislas Vitort asked, "Hi Greg, I created a project from an existing one, saved it under a different name, then I changed the new project sample rate from 44.1 to 48K. That ruined the old project's audio. Is that undoable?" So see, because if we change the sample rate, it could be that the files themselves, so let's say if I'm here, and I have my files that are at 44.1, and then if we imported a file that was at 48K, just find a file that's probably at 48. Okay, so I think that probably if you come over and we just all right, just seeing if. So try to, when you're dealing with like sample rate changes, so it says then you change it to new project, sample rate 44.1, and that ruined the old project's audio. Is that undoable? So see if you go back to 44.1 in the project setup, if the audio plays back fine. If it does, it shouldn't be a problem for you to do that. But the best way to change the sample rate so that you don't have any problems, we'll take a quick listen to this file here. This will be at 44.1K, just so we get kind of the pitch and tonality of the audio. So what I would do is kind of come over here to the project setup. So you go Shift plus the letter S, and then I'm going to switch to sample rate here. We'll get a couple of prompts that says, do you want to convert the audio files to the new rate? So yes, I'm going to convert the files, and we get asked, do you want to keep the source files in the pool directory? So we'll say keep. That way I'll have the 44.1 and the 48K files. So it's converted them and says, do you want to keep the audio events at their sample position? Here you probably want to choose no. And now when we play back, we can see that the files are at 48K. So we play back, it's going to be the same pitch. And the files are playing back. So, if you change the sample rate of the project to 44.1 and the files play back, again, you could take that particular project and go to your project menu to project setup and switch the sample rate here. You want to say probably yes, yes. You may get asked if something is in musical mode. If you want to render that, choose yes. The last question about keeping them at their sample positions, you want to choose no. And then, when you do that, you still have the 44.1 and 48K files. All right, so we see Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. Buddy, his cat, is waving a paw hello to my cat and other pets nearby. Michael Marshall, is there a Zoom session today? So yes, there will be. Look forward to seeing you on there. I may have to leave for a parent-teacher conference in the middle, but we'll get started at least. And we see Michael Marshall says if there's a Zoom meeting today, Venus, I assume is his pet, might put in an appearance. All right, so we see from Suede TV, he says, could you please explain when and how to use / demo Soft Clipper and Cloner, please? So Soft Clipper is going to be just a kind of, a little bit of distortion. So let's just come over. Let me just. So we'll open up project here. So let's say we'll put a soft clipper on here. So if you want to just put a little bit of distortion, you could adjust the output here. So, and then we could also just adjust the second order harmonics. And we could adjust kind of the third order harmonics. So if you wanted to add just a little bit of clipping, could be useful on guitar parts, making drum loops come alive. That's a great use for that. Now so just think of it as like a saturation plugin. Now when we want to do stuff with the cloner is really good for like vocal doubling. So I'll come over here and we'll just put the cloner on this particular track. So let's say and so what it's going to do is kind of a panner and delay. So let's come over to the inserts. We will come over. So we could have kind of 4 different voices that could be created, but a lot of times we may want to use this for doubling. So let's say, if we want to just do like a fat doubler is a good use for it. So or if you wanted to sound like maybe there's just like if 2 people are singing. Or if you want to sound like 4 people are singing in unison. So again, each band we could adjust how much is being detuned and also the delay, just to kind of make the vocal sound a little. So say I want to double up the chorus, we can say, okay, let's get a 4 voice. Just like on a chorus and background vocals. And we could adjust. So you could, ideally, like people use it to double up, to make like a double tracked vocal sound, or also just for background vocals especially. All right. So we see Uno Memento's working late today, but he'll be popping in from Finland. All right, we see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo. We see Benny from Sweden. And we see just Benny says, emailed you a tricky question I need help with ASAP. So let's go to Benny's question. It was mailed in. All right, so it says, my friend Eva has a huge problem getting Cubase 13 Pro up and running on her iMac Intel 2021, Sonoma 14.7. Can only open up in safe mode. When she tries to start normal mode, iLock stops her. Even though she uninstalled iLock, Cubase cannot access files during installation as they are locked. She also has problems with Cubase 13 crashing when she exits Slate Digital. She can't even start her iMac in safe mode. Also sends a screenshot of some messages. I hope you can help with this. So, I saw some of the screenshots about some of the products not like the Groove Agent content not being there. So if make sure that it's actually, if you go into the Steinberg library manager, that you see the Groove Agent content, or also make sure that she perhaps didn't download Groove Agent content that was available. So let me just take a quick look out of here. So go to your Steinberg library manager, and here we can see Groove Agent content. So I'm not sure if sometimes when people go to the Steinberg download assistant, they often may download additional content or additional Groove Agent kits and not just what's available in their My Steinberg account. In regards to the iLock plugins, if the plugins aren't uninstalled that utilize iLock, uninstalling iLock, the plugins could still be looking to access iLock. So even if iLock is uninstalled, the plugins could still be sending error messages about not being able to run. So check to make sure that each of the plugins are uninstalled or removed from the system that are utilizing iLock protection. Just uninstalling iLock itself won't fix that problem. It's going to be all the plugins that access iLock will still look for iLock and could still throw up error messages. So we'll see if we can get this update. So make sure that all of the content for Groove Agent that is installed, you could check to see if it's showing up here in the Steinberg library manager, and that's always a good place to see. So, but when you go to the Steinberg download section, make sure that she didn't come over to, let's say, sounds and loops and hold up and start working with VST instruments and plugins, like all the additional Groove Agent drum kits that are here that she doesn't have a license for. Make sure that it's only going to be for my products. And if you go to like your Cubase Pro 13, then you should be able to see all of the different what's available for your Cubase Pro 13. That all these, I saw the screenshot that these all seem to be installed, but make sure that they didn't just come over here and install, that she didn't install other Groove Agent kits. And it could be, again, the iLock that could be causing crashes if plugins are still trying to access iLock and you're booting up and exiting. If the plugins are installed but iLock isn't, then you'd have to remove the plugin and not just the iLock controls, the iLock software. All right. Great to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. All right, we see Millard Brown from Pennsylvania. Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. We have Mihai Vasil just saying hello. Thanks for joining us. And Lennart Nielsen also joining us. All right, so we seen Herb Phelps says, "Hi Greg, are you aware of the issue of slow exporting of mixdowns on a Mac Silicon?" So I haven't run into any. So let's say if I wanted to take this project here, and we'll just kind of take a look at my CPU resources. So we're using a lot of different instruments. Let's say as we kick in here. So let's look at my audio performance here. And let's say if I want to do an export audio mixdown. All right, and I'll just say, okay, after export, I'll just create an audio track. Okay, so I'll just put it on my stereo out. So as we're doing this, I'm seeing it's pretty reasonable for a full project with about 12 virtual instruments. All right, and there's my file. So that didn't seem excessively long to me, but let me know if that's kind of shorter than what you're running into. I've seen people mention it. One thing that could also make a difference when doing it, if you do the export audio mix down, sometimes it might go faster if the buffer size is higher. So if you do a higher buffer size, that could increase the export. But I just saw a couple people mention it on like stuff that they want in the next version of Cubase for, to export faster, but it didn't seem like that was incredibly slow for me. All right, so we see Benny says he just has his new Yamaha HS8 subs, and they sound great with his HS7s. Get it? HS7s are my favorite speakers in that range. Okay, so we see Robert Daisy Webb asks, "Hi Greg, I'm wondering if it is possible to freeze/render or whatever you call it only one of my insert plugins into the event without the other inserts being baked into the event into audio." All right, so let's give it a try. So let's say I want to do an insert on this file. I'll just load up a couple of inserts. Let's say mod machine. So it's a delay. Let's do chorus. Let's do a flanger. Let's do a reverb. Okay, so let's say I want my flanger here. So let's see if I know that we could take kind of the whole section of it. So I'm going to go hit F7, which will open up my direct offline processing on the unit. So we're just go here to direct offline processing. I know we could, so if we just drag the effect over, that would automatically render the file. So now as we just play back the audio, we'll mute the inserts here. So if let's just remove this, so it looks like we can. So as we play back just this file, We'll solo this. So if I have all these effects on it. All right, so I'm going to take this delay, drop it in, and then it's rendered that delay, whereas the other files, so all you have to do is open up, if you hit F7, you could open up just the particular, that would open up the direct offline processing, and then you could just drag and insert over to the direct offline processing, and that would render only that one insert effect. So again, if I delete that and say, okay, I now want to throw the flanger on, drag the flanger over, it's applied automatically to the selected file. I'll delete, remove the plugins here. So just drag it from the inserts into the direct offline processing. So select the event, hit F7, drag the insert over, and that will render only that one particular insert to the file, and the rest will just play back in real time. All right. All right, so we have the artist known as Love checking in. Says, hello everyone, please hit the thumbs up button to thank Greg and be safe. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped. All right. All right, so you see Jack C says MIDI remote needs to be set up manually on startup every single time with the 13.05 upgrade. How do I set up so it loads automatically? This is not a problem in the 13.041 version. So it seems like my MIDI remote here, let me just connect mine. Sorry, my device is disconnected. But I could try to restart, but I haven't had that case. Let me know if you're running into it with on Mac or PC, but it seems like my Mac, it's automatically showing up as expected right here. All right, so we see Vabid ZM says, why after exporting my full song to MP3 the volume sounds low? All right, so what can happen with tracks depending on kind of your gain structure of your project. So let's come over here. So let's say as we're doing this particular file, so let's say we're listening to this file and we look at our meters. The one thing that could throw people off, so if you look at your meters here, what a lot of people do is it may sound loud in their particular room, and they use this as their volume control. And then when you use that as your volume control, we can see that this will automatically create a lower output mix. It may sound full in your room because the gain structure of your monitors may be set. And this is why we have the control room, that we have the control room volume for the monitoring as opposed to the master fader. So check to see where your master fader is, because a lot of people, when I get this question, they're using their master fader as kind of their monitoring volume as opposed to using the control room, which doesn't affect the gain structure, as you can see, of the mix. So we're looking at our master fader here. We don't notice any of those, any changes when I do this, but if I hold this down, let's say my master fader, you'll quickly see the levels go down. So people, when I get this question, often have their master fader set too low, and when they export, if their master fader is at minus 20 dB, their file that they export to is going to be at minus 20 dB. So, so just be aware of that, because that can make a difference in the exporting. And you can just simply use the control room if you have Cubase Pro to utilize your volume here, but make sure that your master fader is set close to 0 dB as you can. All right, so we got Peter checking in from Montreal. Okay, Michael Graybill says, updating VST 2.x Altiverb 7 to VST 3 because suspecting memory leak. Would swapping them out one by one repair project suffering from a memory leaky plugin, or should I create a new project and migrate? So I don't think that the memory leak is going to occur if that particular plugin that was causing it is not loaded up. So I don't think you'll be, you'll have to do anything special once you have a new version. It won't, the memory leak, if it's being caused by a plugin, won't cause that. So we see from Yash Desai, any updates on the Cubase 14 release date? So generally, Steinberg, we don't announce Cubase 14 until release day. So as soon as it's released, there's always people that are working on Cubase 14 and Cubase 15 and all sorts of stuff. All right, so you see Yash says, I've been having issues with the Elastic Pro time algorithm in Cubase 13.05 where I can hear clicks and pops when I'm stretching and transposing audio. It adds to the exports as well. It says, I tried to change the cable which connects my audio interface and messed with the buffer size, but nothing seems to get rid of the issue. It says I'm running a 2018 Intel i9 MacBook Pro. So, I haven't run into any issues of, when doing, Elastic Pro time stretching, that it makes a difference. We'll give it a quick try. I'm not sure what the amounts are that you're doing. If you're trying to go down 90%, there could be some artifacts with it, but let's say this project's set up for it pretty quickly. So if I just take all these files here, I'll place all these files into musical mode. Okay, so they all look like they are in musical mode. So if I just change my tempo here, let's say to 60 beats a minute. So it's down 40%. Let's say we go up 40% from the original tempo. So I'm not sure, depending on the material, and let's say if we did it on pitch correction as well, select all the events, and let's just change our pitch. So I don't hear any clicks or pops. So I haven't really experienced that. So let me know how many tracks you're doing. Now also for each file you may choose to do, there's multiple Elastic algorithms. So, the ones that it kind of shows up by default is going to be the Elastic Pro time, but you could also change ones for pitch, like for vocals and tape if you wanted to mimic very speed recording technology of analog tape. And there's also ones that preserve formants, but I don't think there are any changes in 1304.1 to 1305 with Elastic. It's going to be the same algorithm. But let me know if you're, what size of project you're doing, what the percentage changes that you're doing with it. All right, so we see John Costigan. It's going to be in and out today. He's doing chores from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right, so Gerd Grabosh says, hello Greg, your videos are great. I hope you will continue to work like this for a long time. Best regards from Bremerhaven, Germany. Thanks for the kind words. Yeah, it seems like a pretty effective way of me not having to travel as much. So I think the company likes not paying for me traveling as well at Yamaha. So you could see more, interact with more customers directly here. Algis asks, is it worth worrying about, say, compressor has overloads in and or out, 1 dB, 2 BD, or 1 dB, 2 dB? Same for mixer channels, top. Thanks in advance. So, being that everything is in 32-bit floating point, obviously I would worry about it when you hear it versus when you're doing it, when you're doing a mix. So like as you're doing a mix, you may say like different parts that may creep up and may overload just for a split second, but there's a lot of internal headroom with the 32-bit floating point engine. So, if we were recording 24-bit files and we had a 24-bit fixed point system, meaning that, the data that we capture, we can't really add more information to it. At that point, I would be more concerned, but the mix engine itself is set to accommodate tremendous amount of headroom. I think it's like 1542 dB. So it's really hard to clip internally, and you could always bring back the master fader a little bit if necessary. All right, so we see Yash Desai says waiting for Cubase to implement VSTI undo and redo as it worked for all instruments in Cubase 12. Yeah, I mentioned that before to the team, and they said that was actually kind of almost it wasn't intended to work with VST instruments, and it wasn't guaranteed and didn't work consistently with all instruments, especially third-party ones. All right, so we see Jack C says, can you please explain how to make the MIDI remote script load automatically with new version 13.05? It is no longer possible. So see if you're in the MIDI remote. So all of mine have worked on Mac and PC without issues. But see if you come over, let's say if we just come over to our script settings, if you actually, when you come over here, do you see your script listed at all? So here you could actually just kind of see where your scripts are located. So make sure that for some reason like this didn't become disabled. So you could choose to disable and enable scripts. So see if I wanted to come here, we could choose to enable the controller script. So just make sure that you have it set to that if you see this kind of grayed out. So again, if we just come here, we go to the MIDI remote, click here on your settings and go to the scripts and see if it's grayed out. If it's grayed out, it's probably just disabled. So try to enable your script there if you see it. But there's nothing that really changed with that for scripts. And I think other people, I haven't seen it on my Mac or PC at all. Maybe if other people have, I think Jazz Dude said he didn't have any issues with his. All right, so we see Alcadroid asks, what is the best way of getting Cubase to follow stop, start, temp from a sequencer like the Oxyone? I use Cubase for live jamming, and this is the last feature I really need to work. I'll just look up the Oxyone here real quick and see what the sync capabilities are on it. So the timing base of the timing base of Cubase is going to be sample accurate. So if we actually run into different functions where, so to properly synchronize Cubase, for it to follow something else, it needs an audio clock, or the audio is just kind of drifting. So if you're just dealing with MIDI information, you could probably get by with it. But as soon as you deal with audio, which most people are using audio, that the MIDI clock, which is used to often synchronize between different, let me just opt out of all their ads. And let me just see if it actually has, just looking at their website. So, all right, just looking at the unit itself here. All right, so seeing the CV outputs. All right, so for Cubase to be externally clocked, all right, so you have MIDI in, MIDI out, you have clock out. So does it have, I see clock out, but does that actually, it's hard to see from the description here. Let me just, but if the device is sending like time code, like LTC or MIDI time code plus word clock, then Cubase would synchronize with it. But if it's just sending MIDI clock doesn't have a fine enough resolution to synchronize audio. So that's why most sequencers that are sample based, which actually allow you to properly synchronize audio to MIDI, won't do that. So you would need to utilize a master device that has a word clock, or that can transmit word clock, so that the audio clocks are synchronized in addition to like a MIDI time code or SMPTE time code. All right. Okay. All right, so we see June 06 asks Greg, I was wondering if there are any plans to update VST amp rack. I thought it'd be cool if there were cool to have a light version of Helix Native included with Cubase Pro. Yeah, so we'll see, obviously Line 6 is part of the Yamaha family, but they run as kind of a different group inside of Yamaha. So, but I'll make sure to mention that. All right, so we have Parabot 2 saying hello to everyone. All right, I'm going to post the live stream or the Zoom link. All right, so we see Sway TV just says, may I ask where one can listen to Uninvited? That song haunts me. Love the melody. So it's a demo file. Sometimes I get demo files from friends that they aren't published because YouTube is really good at kind of striking videos that used published material. But it was a song written by my friend Vince Melamed. And Vince has been on some of the Zoom social stuff in the past. But with Vince, he's an incredibly successful songwriter, and lived in Nashville for a number of years. Lives in California now, in Ventura, but he's played with Bob Dylan, the Eagles, he was like the touring keyboard player in the Eagles in the 70s and stuff. So it's a great song, but I don't think it was released. So it might be a demo. So maybe someone will do a cover version of it, hearing it on the live streams. All right, so Gintaris Slekis asks, hi, how can I view all and only Steinberg VST plugins in plugin search window? So if we want to go to, you could set up the VST plugin manager. So here, and we have the option to sort by vendor. So if we are here, we can say, okay, sort by vendor, and we can make a new plugin collection. So we see this little plus sign. I want to come over here. Let's copy the current collection. We'll call this Steinberg only. We just get my keyboard to wake up here. Okay, so we'll call this Steinberg only. And now I will say delete, 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 delete. So now when we go to search for plugins or add plugins, we'll see only my Steinberg plugins. So again, go to your plugin information window, VST plugin manager. And then you could, if you click on this button here, you could say search by category. And then you could have different presets. So I could come here, here's my default. So you could sort by category or sort by vendor, and then see all, and see only Steinberg plugins. And you do that for the instruments as well as the actual effect plugins. All right, Parabot 2 asks, Greg, what's your opinion of the best plugin or tool to make psychedelic type sounds, effects, etc.? So if I had to kind of play around with something, I guess when I would think psychedelic, let's say if I put this on maybe a drum bus, just for demonstration here. Maybe like the play around with, so let's say we'll just do our drums here. Don't have any good psychedelic material, but we'll give it a shot here. All right, so I would maybe go for the under delay, the MultiTap Delay. There's lots of great stuff that you could do here. So you can do like odd delay stuff, but let's come in and do, say on our mix, we could say, okay, we want to do, but we could say, okay, let's come over here to this section. We could add different modules. So let's say I want to do an envelope filter just on the delays. We could add other modules. Then we could add a frequency shifter. So if we want to come over here, let's just turn it down so it's less annoying. So if you want to remove, now we could also just come over here and say, I just only want different effects for the tap. So while we're playing, that we could put in all sorts of effects that are just on the taps. So you could set the number of taps. So when we come over here, I could have just, different plugins that are just on the tap. So let's just add an auto pan. And just kind of give you an idea of some of the if you use the beam me up there. So I guess that would be pretty psychedelic sounding. So check out the MultiTap Delay. All sorts of great very creative processes you could do with that plugin for psychedelic type work. So we see Jan just saying daylight saving time issue. Yeah, so next weekend, the US, we kind of adjust our clocks. So sorry about that. All right, Equilibrium just says, which version is this? So it's Cubase 13 Pro. All right, so we see Millard Brown says, hi Greg, I'm wondering if 13.05 is an officially released build. The hub still shows a note about 13.041. I've updated 13.05 and might be noticing higher CPU usage even when an empty project. So it is an official build that came out. There is a, 13.05 came out. There is a pre-release for like Windows ARM processors. So if you have like the new Snapdragon processors, like in the Microsoft Surface, there's a preview for that. So we could think of that kind of like the Apple Silicon processors that we see on Mac OS hardware. So that is a pre-release for if you're running Snapdragon processors, but the rest 13.05 if you're running Intel or AMD traditional processors, then the 13.05 is the official latest release. So we see Equilibrium says, I'm really new to music. Would it be better to start with Elements or should I go for Pro since I'm just getting started? So, Cubase, either one is a great choice. It really depends where you're comfortable financially. If you start off with Pro, it's a great solution in that you will never outgrow it in a sense, so that as you're working, it's going to have a wealth of new features. But you could start off with Cubase Elements if you don't need all the advanced features. Many people start with Cubase Elements, and then as your needs grow, you can just simply upgrade from your Cubase Elements and not lose the value in your Cubase Elements purchase. You could just simply update from there into Cubase Artist, which has more, and then Cubase Pro from there. All right, so we have Rodriguez Dasi says, hello, how to convert a stereo audio file to mono in Cubase. Okay, so let's just do a new project here. All right, so let's say we have stereo files. There's a couple of approaches. One is we can just come over and we go to your project menu. We could say, let's convert tracks, and we can say multi-channel to mono. So we could do it like that. So we have a mono left, right. If we wanted to convert this particular track to mono, you could go to like an export audio mix down. We could do, I'm just going to solo that particular track, and we will say export as mono down mix. And we could just create an audio track. And now we do that. Let me just set my left and right locators this time before I do that. So I'm going to select the event and hit the letter P. And we could do export audio mix down, export as a mono down mix. And then we could export, do a mono down mix like that within the project. So if you wanted to break it into the two individual files, you could do that. But if you wanted to mono sum it, then do the export audio mix down. Then you should be all set. Great. All right, Jim Holland just says, is there a way to select all the tracks within a folder from the folder header? Like if the folder was closed, for instance. All right, let's give it a try. I think we might be able to. Okay, so let's put these into a folder track. Okay. I'll go ahead and just put these in as well. Okay, so these are all in this folder. So let's see if we can do it maybe in a project logical editor. So let's try select. Might be container type is folder track, and then property, maybe set to parent object is selected. So I have this track selected here. Let me just duplicate this. Okay, so we could select the tracks. Let me see if it's. All right, just. Yeah, so now these tracks are selected. Okay, so we have, let me just make this a little more. All right, so I have this folder selected. All right, and let's see if they are selected. So I'm going to go to the top folder, hit apply. Okay, so I have this. All right, so let's see if we do a transform. We'll do record enable on all and see if they get selected when we, if all of them are record enabled on the selected one. So yeah, you could just, so to select, just come right over here. We could select media type is equal to audio, property is set to parent object is selected. So try that. All right, so we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. All right, Tommy Valenko asks, hi, great question. How to separate backing vocals from lead vocal with spectral layers? 11. Let me see if I have a file here. See if I have a mix down here. All right, so I'm going to take just maybe a smaller portion of this for time's sake. So let's say we have, so let me just bounce the selection here. All right, so if you have Spectral Layers Pro 11, let's come over and now we'll run this as our extension. Try it again. There is kind of a, my license may have run out on my Spectral Layers. Let me see if I could. Yeah, so, but there is, once you have the vocals, you could just simply unmix the song vocals, and that you could do unmix the song. I would have to update my license right after the live stream, but you could unmix a song, and then there is an unmix voices function. So select the layer with the vocals, and then you could choose to do unmix voices, and that will separate the lead vocal from background vocals. Sorry, don't have the license for it installed. I have it for Friday's live stream. All right, so you see FlyV says I'm having an issue with my MIDI remote in MIDI Remote Managers. It shows disconnected at times. So, see what happens. Like, so I'll go to my MIDI remote. So like, when I have, like I just unplugged my Nano control, you can see that it's fine there, but make sure that you have like MIDI communication with the operating system. Sometimes, I've had controllers that can take too much USB bandwidth, when it's connected to a hub, for instance, and that could cause different problems. Also, make sure that your ports, if you're running PC especially, make sure that your USB ports are set to the full bandwidth for power, that they're not doing any eco or power saving functions as well. All right, I'm going to post the Zoom meetup. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin on with his dog Stella. Everyone give a big woof to Stella. Let's see, Miller Brown says another vote here for uninvited. So glad you liked the song. I love Vince's writing. He's really good and just a great guy. Got to catch up with him this week. All right, so we see Pedro just says, hello, buddy. What's the best way for splitting MIDI drum parts? I'm not sure if when I split them, I'm creating more instances of contact and consuming more CPU, or they're splitting them from the source. So I think it can matter if it is an instrument track or a MIDI track. So let's come over here and let's do an instrument track. And I'll come over here to Groove Agent. All right, so and I have this pattern here, and I'll just turn that down to kill. All right, so I'm going to drag this pattern over to my project window. All right, so and let's create a MIDI track. Okay, so I'll take this and we'll make a copy. All right, so we have a MIDI track. So now if it's an instrument track, I select the event. We can go to our MIDI menu and we'll see dissolve part. So here we could separate pitches, we'll process, and now each one of these will be a new instance of Groove Agent. So if we undo that, so we see that when we have an instrument track, that it needs to recreate more instruments, may or may not take more CPU power. So again, we watch the VST rack here. We go to MIDI, dissolve part. Now we undo that. Let's do this with a MIDI track. And this MIDI track could be routed out to Groove Agent. So we'll say, okay, this is now going out to Groove Agent SE. And now I think that this will just add MIDI tracks. So let's come to MIDI and dissolve the part here. We'll separate the pitches. And now these can all go to the same instrument, but each sound will be on its own lane. So if you don't want it to be multiple instances of the plugin, send the MIDI out to the plugin from a MIDI track. And if you want it all the instances, if you're doing an instrument track, then it would create more instrument tracks to play back. Okay, everyone is sending a big woof to Stella, Mark Rabin's dog. We have Dwight Cunningham checking in from the Bahamas. All right, so we see Daniel from Croatia on. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you on today. See, Daniel is just asking, has the weather in America calmed down? So I'm sure we were sending it over to Europe, but I think that there's no massive hurricanes coming through. So I think it's been calm for a week or two. Just other things politically are more temperamental as we have our upcoming election. Tim K says, I heard an interview with Nana Visitor where she said, I'm bad with linear time. And my first thought was, that belongs on a t-shirt on me. So linear time's good. All right, so we have Brian Sawyer. He was back in Billville, North Carolina. Hope your trip was well. All right, so Marcus Strymon says, hey, seems like a really dumb question, but is there any option to map track up and track down in the MIDI remote to a single encoder? As far as I saw, it's only previous or next track possible. So when you're doing, when you're utilizing MIDI controllers, it depends on if your MIDI controller, most MIDI controllers will only transmit one value and you increase or decrease. Some controllers, more sophisticated controllers can, like if they have like a jog shuttle wheel, often that controller will transmit different information one direction and send different MIDI messages when you go counterclockwise. So most controllers don't do that. The more expensive ones do, and that's why you kind of often pay for a more more complex setup, but so like my nano control here, I get one MIDI message and it will increment or decrement based upon the actual one MIDI CC message, but we have one kind of MIDI CC message per function. So but some, like if you had the Yamaha Nuage controller, most of those encoders would function so that you could move, you could have a value and move it to clockwise. It would do one MIDI CC, move it counterclockwise. It did a different MIDI CC. So it's really more of a limitation of the controllers that that cause that to not be able to distinguish different MIDI CC messages. So you probably, on most controllers, the vast majority, you're going to have to use two different devices. All right, so we see from Sway TV, says the loudness tab is gone in Wavelab 12 Pro from Wavelab 11 Pro. Replaced with a new audio analysis tool window. Can you demo that feature, please? All right, so let's open up Wavelab. All right, so let's come over here. Just open up quick. All right, so now when we go to loudness, I think if we just come over here, so we can see the loudness tab when we go to analyze. And once we are here, we could just see, okay, we want to be able, so here's where we can see a lot of our different analysis options for your loudness, and you could actually kind of determine what for different streaming services. So let's say YouTube, they want minus 14 LUFS. If we go to Apple Music, you may have different settings for different delivery standard formats. So here we could just come over and say, okay, for Amazon Music, we can have different presets. And then we could actually just say, okay, let's do an analysis of the file, which it did, and we could see where the loudness was, the loudness range, if we had DC offset. So we could just kind of actually see where our files are for the different delivery standards right here. And I think that there's also a question from Sway TV on working on if you had like a sibilance in a vocal file and how to do, since we're in Wavelab, and how to do processing on just a sibilant range. And I saw that you had lots of like 13 plugins open. So if you're running all 13 plugins, there's I would approach in maybe a different way. So if we were here, I would probably just choose, to take a plugin, and you could take like the Steinberg de-esser, works very well. So if we come over here to dynamics, we'll see the de-esser. And if we wanted to, try to just render the de-esser on the selected range, we could select the range of the audio here. And then when we go to render, instead of rendering it on the entire file, that we could just render the selected audio range with that process. So from I think it was you that had sent it, but with the, I'm not sure if that was after all of the effects, where you kind of saw the sibilant frequency when you put it on the rainbow, where we could have different frequencies kind of pointed out to us in colors of the waveform, which is really handy, especially if you're doing like book on tape, that style of editing. But now we could just, so if this was kind of the source material and you wanted to get rid of it, I would just use like the de-esser, and you could do it on a whole track. It may not affect it because the frequencies are pretty high. But if you wanted to just do it on a selection, just click on the render, and then you could just do, And then you could just choose to, okay, I want to do multiple outputs or just on the selected audio range as needed. And then that way you don't have to run a de-esser or the other processing through the entire file. All right, jump back to Cubase. Okay, so we see Trolls to Journe. Hi Greg, how do I migrate audio devices to make them seem like it's one audio device? The problem with doing that in most scenarios is that unless you have synchronization, because when we're recording into Cubase and playing back, we're doing, let's say you're at 44.1K or 48K. So if you're at 48K, you have 48,000 samples per second. So Cubase needs to know where and to play back those samples reliably together. Now, most audio interfaces don't have a way of synchronizing. So if you have an audio interface that has a word clock, then those two devices can be synchronized together. The vast majority of audio interfaces don't have word clock connections. So without a word clock connection, the audio could be going out at different times, and we send the audio out to different times. And if each interface is set to different buffer sizes, is set to how they handle the audio, there's no way for the audio to be synchronized properly. So that's why you see like one dedicated ASIO driver. So, on a Mac, you could do it with Core Audio. I think that even Apple doesn't recommend it because it's not very reliable. Came in like OS 10 when it was released in 2001. Hasn't been updated since. And again, you still run into compounded latency and the ability of the devices, the different audio interfaces, often not being able to synchronize. So, and that's why most audio programs don't treat it that way, because they need the audio to be played back at a known time. All right, so we see from Flyv, it says, I got my MIDI device working again, but I had to reset it up. What's the best way to avoid this, just so I know for next time parts of it aren't working again either? So once you have it set up, go to like your scripts here. And then you could just choose to export your script. And then at any point you could choose to import the script if for some reason it didn't show up. So once you have a script, just simply export it, and then you could import the same script back in. All right, so we see Marcus Strymon just says, so that means a controller that has example CC83 for the encoder, I can only map either track up or track down. PreSonus fader port 8 in MIDI mode. So yeah, that'd be the case. So a lot of times you have buttons like on top of each other. So like this is one of the cool things I like about the Nano control is that, you have 3 buttons that are assignable. So if you need to up, down, left, right, you could assign buttons as well as faders and encoders. All right. So we see from Marcus Strymon, so there isn't a distinct scroll track function that would work in both directions, like pre-gain or volume or pan do. So, when you're doing, how Cubase is breaking apart, because, like if you're doing volume is going to go up and down, just like so that's one MIDI message that's going up or down. So, but that is one particular, that message is designed to go up and down from a single message. So when we're doing functions like next track, previous track, those are 2 separate functions. So it's not just, some controls will lend itself to going up and down on a single function. But if you wanted to go up and down on two separate functions, that's when it doesn't work that way. But, you could assign buttons just to go, So if I just wanted to come over here, let's say we'll go to my untitled page, and I can say, okay, I want these two buttons to go to, say up. So we could just go to navigate up. It's probably going to be here. I'll just searching for it here. All right, so I think if we just go to navigate, so we could say, I want this button here to be down. And I want this button here to be up. Then I can just navigate just like that. So while, so that way we could have a button that does the particular function that you want. But again, if we assign it to a MIDI CC, there's no way to, because it's two separate commands, to do that. All right, so wonderful to see Spa Dogs on. All right, so we see from Jay from Secret Studios. It says, hi Greg, I'd love to see how you'd approach importing an acoustic guitar recording and preparing/treating it as main sample with 18 dB gain range, so a sit in future VI accompaniment. All right, so let's see if I have a file here quickly. Let me just... Yeah, I may have something. Let me just look in a different spot. Just looking for one. It's all right. Let me see if I can see if maybe it's under my friend's name. Look in one other spot. I'll just try a different file, sorry. I'll just open up that file. Sorry about that. All right, so here I have a couple guitar recordings. So if I would just want to take, all right. All right, so like if I want to take that, so let's just take a quick look at where, so if I go to my audio and we'll go to statistics and I'll see kind of where the particular file is sitting. All right, so we see that my average RMS is minus 17.471. For loudness, for our LUFS, you see that I'm at roughly minus 12 LUFS. All right, so, and let's say if I wanted this to be minus, let's see if you specify dB. So right now, if I wanted to take this guitar, and then if we go to audio to normalize, under processes, then what we could do is we could choose to normalize in, so I could say, okay, let's normalize the file to minus 18 dB, so we could do that, or we could choose, I want this to be at minus 14 LUFS. So we could, and this could also depend on if you're, if minus 18 dB is 0 dB for you, but you could just normalize the file to get a very specific dB factor, or if you want it to be based on loudness units. So you can just do this from the audio processes to normalize, and then you can get it optimized for exactly what you want it to be. Let me know if that makes sense, Jay. Hope to see you on the Zoom today. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom link one more time. We'll be starting in about 30 minutes. All right, so Daniel asks, got any advice on efficiency / workflow, specifically with beats? So I think a lot of times it's, if we were working with a beat, one easy way of kind of doing it, I like to still do kind of like my beats in the drum editor. So we'd come over here, let's say if I just wanted to make a quick beat. So just start with the Groove Agent SE. All right, so we'll try this kit. All right, so let's say I just wanted to, so I'm just going to create just a quick event here. So I like to just, when we see our drum map choice here, I'm just going to say, drum map from instrument, and we could do that with Groove Agent. So now when I double click, we can just start programming. So I'm going to put it on just like a 2 measure-ish loop. So just put this on a cycle. All right, so what I'm going to do now is just come over and say, okay, we'll start with kick 1, and I'll just kind of zoom this out so we see our grid here. And what's kind of cool about this is we could just say, all right, and then we could just say, okay, we want to come over and say, okay, we want to put maybe then if you wanted to just kind of come over and paint in kind of different So at this point, you could just kind of program stuff directly right here. And then you could put in different quantizing values. Another approach is also just to go to, if you go to a MIDI insert. So we go to MIDI insert and you can pull up kind of the Beat Designer plugin. And there's all sorts of great presets that will play with this. So if we just want to open up the presets, you could just kind of click here. I won't save that preset, it's empty, but we'll just go to load preset, and then here there's all sorts of patterns. So let's say if we just So here you could just kind of paint in and put in different swing feels for different patterns there. And then once you have this done, we could choose to insert it, pattern at the left locator, at the cursor, wherever you want. So either way is a great way for polishing beats. All right, so we see from Marcus Strymon says also one final question on this topic. Is there any way to make the DAW track selection follow a control message? The SSL UF8 and PreSonus fader port both don't do this. They bank up and down their track selection, but Cubase wouldn't follow this. Dom Segalis also criticized this on the UF8. The soft tube fader Mark III does it though, because it's because of the protocol that's being used. So if you're using Mackie control just isn't set up for, they always assume that you're going to select the track from the controller, kind of like an old hardware perspective. But obviously when we're working in a DAW, that's not the case. So if I wanted to come over here, so if you're utilizing the Mackie control protocol, it's not going to follow, because the Mackie control protocol doesn't allow you to follow. But if I go to my MIDI remote here, so say I have channel 1 selected, and on my Korg Nano control I have mixer, that if I move the faders here, you can see like I move fader 1, it's automatically going to, you know, come right over here, and we could adjust like our volume for our specific tracks. So I come here, that's moving the fader. If I move fader 2, we select 2, that's going to be moved. But if I come over here, I go to channel 14, we can see that channel 14, as we move, that this is automatically banking to channel 9 first fader and to channel 10 for the second fader. So we could just come over here. Okay, there's channel 8, here's channel 9. So we could just control. So it's not the MIDI controller's fault, unless it's a limitation of the control protocol. So if it's utilizing Mackie control, which the SSL and probably the fader ports do, they won't follow. But if you're using the MIDI remote, if you just disable the MIDI remote, the Mackie control. So if you go to Studio and come over here to your studio setup and just say, okay, don't run it as a Mackie control, run it as a MIDI remote script, which is probably what the new Softtube is doing, then it's automatically that it's, that once it's working under the MIDI control, that's fine, and then you'll be able to bank as expected. All right, I know we had a couple of questions mailed in. Let's get to those before we run out of time. We'll be starting our Zoom in just a little bit. All right, so we had discussion last time about how to delete the edits folder. Like if we've done processes, let's say we have a file here and we did a process on the audio. So if we come over here, we see our direct offline processing, and let's say I do a fade out on this particular file, that once this file is done, it's placed into an edits folder, and the intention is that you could quickly undo the edit and it goes right back to the original file at any point in time. So there, if we do a backup project, and as we do the backup project, you get the option to come over here, and I'll choose a new folder. That once we do this, we could choose to make direct offline processing permanent, and that won't back up the file. If you never want to go back, to be able to go back to the original file, you could manually delete the particular folder. All right, so we had a question. I installed the montage VST into Cubase, but when I play it back, it's playing a different note than the hard keyboard. Sounds like the soft synth is off by 1 or 2 semitones. I don't have other soft synths installed to test it. Is to test if it is the soft synth or Cubase. So you should have other instruments that are installed with Cubase. So if you get an instrument track, with your Cubase, you should have Retrolog, Pad Shop, Hallian Sonic that you could test to see if it's actually going there. One quick way of testing to see, because a lot of times it could be the MIDI controller is transposed, and if that's the case, what you could do is just on a MIDI track or the instrument track, come over, and then you'll see a MIDI insert. Just come here and you'll see a MIDI monitor. So as soon as you go to the MIDI monitor, hit your note on your keyboard and see if that is the same note that you're hitting. So if it could be that the hardware keyboard is transposed. Now, a couple other things that could be, if we go into the MIDI modifiers, if this is set, so let's say I transpose this up to, and I hit we will now see that my C1 turns into a D1. So that's an area where you could transpose. So once I set that to 0, another area would be if you go under routing, you'll see this little area here for the input transformer. So this could be a project or track based. And if you open the panel, there could be an input transformer that's here. And we could see, basically, we could say, okay, we want to take MIDI notes, and we're going to transform these MIDI notes, and we're going to add 2. So now when I play a C1, so if I come over here, let's say we'll take not the channel, we'll just make sure we're transforming notes. And we'll try main value, add 2. So then you could also transpose it there, but check to see if, when you go to the MIDI control here, if that is actually transmitting the correct pitches, then you could determine if it's going to be there. So likely it's going to be in the controller that's transposing, but if not, check to make sure that, that you have the input transformer isn't turned on, or under the MIDI modifiers that we don't have this set to transpose on input as well. All right, so we had a question on backing up projects. Says from the last live stream, says I should have been more clear. Sorry, when remove unused files is ticked on backup, if a track is muted, it will be included in the backup. So I did a quick test and it was. We just jump to project here. Okay. So I want to do a backup of the project here. So I'm going to mute this particular track, activate the project first. Let's mute this track. We will do a backup of it. And when we get the backup project, we'll do new folder. And we'll get this window here. Now we have minimize audio files. I'll give it a name. Okay, so we'll call this, and then we're going to say we can make our direct offline processing permanent if we had that. Now we choose minimize files. That would be if I had this file but maybe only used like 3 seconds of 2 minutes of it, or just a portion of the file. Then I wouldn't back up unused portions. Now we also have remove unused files. These files are used in the project. If I erased a file from the project that didn't appear in a project window, that would be an unused, not if it's muted. So let's go ahead and we'll back up the project so that we can see that this is now our backup project, and that this project is automatically loaded. So again, we'll open that up from scratch. So muting a file won't exclude it from the backup. So I'll just come over here. So here's our project, and we can see that even though it's muted, it's still in a project. It's still included in the backup because the actual file is on the project window. Okay, so we had a question. Thanks for answering my question last live stream about exporting in multiple formats. Is there an audible or quality difference if I convert the files versus exporting in multiple formats for CD streaming? So I think I think it would give you kind of the same process. So it's often going to be the same algorithms for the conversion that's going to be utilized during the export process. So you could take a listen And if you go into Wavelab, you could load both files and do an audio file comparator if you wanted to see if there's any differences, but I think that it would be pretty subtle. All right, and we had a question last live stream about using a marker track while in Very Audio, and I just was kind of thinking about it some more and was kind of taking maybe one approach. So let's say if we have markers in our project here, so let's say we have a number of markers here, and if we're in Very Audio and we're in the lower zone, and we wanted to navigate by, so I'm going to edit the Very Audio for the vocal. All right, so now if I have this, I can hit the N key, and that could navigate us to the next or previous marker. So if we're in the lower zone, and we can make the lower zone really big if we wanted to, this way we could navigate between the different markers and still have Very Audio open. But if this was a separate standalone window, we wouldn't be able to do that. But it would take the focus of the window. But if we're here, we could navigate in our project with the markers using N for the next marker and B for going back to the previous marker. And another question that I thought of maybe another solution when someone couldn't see the chords for the audio event. So if we come over here, we often will see chords. If you don't see the chords listed, you can go to the setup sections and just make sure that chords is checked for an available inspector slot for the audio. So if you don't see the chords listed there, right click on a section and you'll see setup sections and make sure that chords are visible. Okay. So we've got this next questions. Here are a couple more questions if you have time. How can I quickly set range from the selection? This is useful when we're working with automation. Say I select a clip when I want the automation in the volume lane to follow the clip size. Okay. So let's say if I have a range set here. So, and I want to do like a quick, like maybe an automation bump. So I could have the selection. Let's maybe say, okay, I want this word to be a little louder. If I just hit the arrow key, that will automatically move the range selection between different tracks. And if I have the automation lane open, I can now just do a quick bump like that. So we could just kind of select the range, arrow down to automation, and make adjustments. So that's a pretty quick, easy way of doing that. And if you wanted to, like, you know, if you have an event that you wanted to select the range around, if we have the range tool selected, you could just double click and then the range goes there. And there's a preference that could work in conjunction with this. So if you go to your preferences or settings, there will be a cycle follows range selection. So if I have that disabled, I could double click on an event and we could set the range around the event. So we could select the range, but it doesn't move the left and right locators to the particular range. So if I just double click on the event with the range tool, we could do it like that. But with that preference set, we can now say cycle follows range selection. And this way, once that cycle is set, we can say, okay, just double click here, and the range is automatically selected for the particular event that's double clicked on with the range tool. So I can just come here. I want to take this and move the range around there. All right, and we see kind of the opposite. It says same for setting range from the loop or cycle. How can I transfer that time selection to the range selection? So if we, you know, one of the things, like, I think if we just double click, we just say, so if we have this particular range selection. Let's see if we double click in a blank spot. So if you have a blank track, what you could do is, okay, I want to make the range based on the left and right locators. So let's say my left and right locators are around this event, and I wanted to base a range selection. So if you have a blank track, you could double click and then double click on your blank track and move the range. So I know some people will keep like a blank track just for like track notes or something like that. But if the range is, so if we're over here, you could double click to create an empty part and then double click on that part with the range. And now you could move that range based upon the left and right cycle markers. So you could give that a try. All right, so I think we got that question answered. Let's jump back to our live stream here. All right, and if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right. All right, I'm just seeing from Y42, will Steinberg sue me when I get the Cubase logo tattooed on my upper arm? I think we might be able to do a social media post with that. So, but I don't think we will sue you for that. We're busy coming up with cool software. All right, great to see Witch Schweitzer from West Palm Beach. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Flyv says, another little problem is my editor lane in Groove Agent has no arrow key beside it. It was there before. So let me see if it's Groove Agent or Groove Agent SE. So let me I'll add both here. Okay, so let me just check. All right, great to see Michael Teams from Weatherford. So is my editor lane in Groove Agent has no arrow key beside it. Okay, so let's load a kit. Okay. Okay, let me just, my editor lane in Groove Agent. All right, so let's come over to pattern. All right, so just see it has no, so let me know if this is the editor lane. It has no arrow key beside it. It was there before. So it looks like it's all kind of working as expected here for me, but let me know if I'm in the wrong spot or if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so we see Val just saying, hey guys, still in the session. Just want to report the UAD console recall destroyed all my sessions after the latest update, removed it, and everything started to work again. Best greets from Vienna. Thanks for sharing that, Val. All right, so we see, is it possible to edit the drum map so I only have the instruments in the map I use, i.e. with an E drum pattern? So yeah, if you wanted to take, if we have different drum sounds here, so let me just draw in a couple of notes. All right, so, and I have lots of, let me just delete some of these notes for. Okay, so I don't want to see all of the lanes. If we come over here, we'll see just a little kind of masking option. Let me just find it here. This little option. And then we have where you could show drum sounds in use by the instrument, or show drum sounds with events. And now we could actually just see only the events or ones that are being used in the instrument. So just make sure that you click this little icon here. You should be able to see that. Okay, Michael Teams says, howdy Greg, please show us how to stretch MIDI tracks. Thanks. Okay, so let's say I have a MIDI track here. So let's go ahead and just solo this. So I'm going to change my sizing mode here to sizing applies time stretch. Then I could just say, let's just stretch this out. So we'll just start from this event. Or if I want this to be much shorter. So just your normal sizing tool, you could just switch that to sizing applies time stretch, and that will work for MIDI or audio in a main project window. All right, so we have Tiago joining from Newcastle he's from Brazil. All right, so we have a question from Stacy Douglas. Can you add a key command to a logical editor preset? I can't figure out how to do it. So yeah, when you go to the key command section, you're going to look for process project logical editor presets. So we'll come here, let's get to the categories. And now we will see process project logical or process logical editor presets. And then you could select your preset, and even as soon as you make a preset, it automatically will show up here, and then you could assign a key command to it. So once again, key commands to process logical preset or process project logical editor preset. Timerman Guitars is going to up Val and get the Steinberg logo tattooed on his forehead. That may be a little extreme. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped. We're going to be migrating to the Zoom here in just a minute. See if we get maybe one more. All right, so we see Swaroop Mandal says, hi, I'm new to Cubase, just bought it on the 40th anniversary sale. Couldn't figure it out. The audio interface option, every time I have to select it manually, confusion. So if, generally when if you are, make sure one, that you have the audio interface selected. It will use the last audio interface connection that you define in your studio setup here. So when you go to your audio system, it will use that. If it doesn't, it could mean that there's something that's causing your Cubase to crash if it shows up with like a list of all of your audio devices. It could be like a third-party plugin that's causing Cubase to crash when it exits. But you shouldn't have to as long as Cubase is starting and if you have a dedicated ASIO driver for the interface, that always is helpful. But it should automatically read your audio interface as long as it's communicating with Cubase on startup. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and we'll go ahead and start our Zoom. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll paste the Zoom invite. One last time, I'm going to start the Zoom meeting. All right. All right, so we have some people in the waiting room. All right, so we have Brian, we have Tim K, Jan, Fernando, Tim Weinheimer, Peter from Montreal, Rich Schweitzer, Sway TV, Soren. All right, see if we get some more people sneaking over. All right, we see Jay. All right, we have Vince. Give it a couple more minutes and I'll end the live stream here. All right, Michael Teams. Let's see if we get to meet the famous Buddy the cat here. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Ah. My cat looks a lot like yours does, Tim. Mm-hmm. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream here. Hang on. All right, so I'm going to end the stream here. And all right.